Week 15 of the fantasy football season. And here's the top 12 quarterbacks. I'm ranking this week the first guy, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes, another great season. I know Tyreek Hill obviously left in a trade in the offseason, but Mahomes hasn't missed a beat. He's pretty much putting up 30-plus fantasy points each and every week. And this week here, with a matchup at the Houston Texans that obviously can't stop anyone, even though for the most part they shut down Dak Prescott last week before that last drive of the game. But Mahomes obviously far superior quarterback than Dak Prescott. And in this ball game, I think he goes off once again, and I got him at 1. Number 2, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So what a season it's been for Jalen Hurts, and another guy, pretty much 30, 35 fantasy points weekly he's been putting on the board here for this Philadelphia team and fantasy owners. So right now, it's all working great here for him. A.J. Brown having a great year. Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, he should be back any week as well. And Jalen Hurts, he's getting a lot of running yards on the ground as well over the last 4 or 5 weeks here. So this week here in a good matchup with a Bear defense that really has had trouble over the last few weeks, especially trading some of their better players. Robert Quinn, where they traded him to Philly, and Roquan Smith, where they traded him to the Baltimore Ravens. I think Hurts has another big ball game this week here, is this MVP candidate. And I got him at 2. Number 3, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So now he's got the full arsenal of weapons back in the lineup here. Justin Herbert. Mike Williams came back last week, big ball game. Keenan Allen, the last 3 weeks, he's been back and playing good football. And this week here, it's a good matchup versus the Tennessee Titans that last week couldn't stop a mediocre Jacksonville offense. And they made Trevor Lawrence look like Peyton Manning in that ball game. So this week here, another home game where I think Herbert goes off and has a good one. And last week, he threw for over 350 yards in that game. So this week, I don't know if the yards will be there, but I think at least 250 to 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Number 4, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So Josh Allen, another great season here for the Buffalo Bills and fantasy owners. I know he had a couple down games here and there, but this week, Buffalo home once again. Miami Dolphins, their defense has been hit or miss over the last few weeks here, and it's a big division game for this Dolphin team, especially Saturday Night Football in freezing cold weather in Buffalo, where possibilities of snow definitely could happen once again. But Josh Allen, they got Cole Beasley back. I don't know how much of the game plan he's going to be part of in this game. Gabe Davis, I know, struggle, but Stephon Diggs, he's been the mainstay, obviously. And the running backs have been pretty decent, and Devin Singletary and obviously James Cook's come on over the last couple weeks. But Allen, with his rushing ability alone, will get 8 to 10 fantasy points there. And this week here, I think he tries to make a statement versus the Miami Dolphins after getting a tough loss early in the season to them. Number 5, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, another solid season here for him. I know he got off to a slow start early in the season, but now this Bengal team's coming into their own, and I know it's a tough ball game versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Joe Burrow and this team. But right here, I think he go out there and have a good game as Joe Burrow. The last few games here, he's definitely been putting up the fantasy points, 20 or more fantasy points. The last 7-8 games in a row here for Joe Burrow. And this week here, I think he could exploit this Tampa Bay defense. Last week, we saw Brock Purdy have a good ball game. And obviously, he was the last pick in the NFL draft this season. So Joe Burrow with an arsenal of weapons, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins if he's healthy in this one, and Tyler Boyd if he's healthy as well. And also Joe Mixon out of the backfield, and he also uses his legs for at least a decent amount of yards. So Joe Burrow this week, I got him at 5. Number 6, Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields, he's back in action once again this week after coming off the bye week. And he's been one of the best quarterbacks over the last 2 months of the season, where his running ability, at least 10 points a week, he's getting fantasy owners points here as Justin Fields. As long as he's running the football well and he's healthy, he's a guy that's going to be within the top 8 to top 10 weekly. I know it's a tough matchup versus the Eagles, but this is a ball game where they're going to be chasing points, and this is going to be a game where, Justin Fields is want to go out there and obviously make the huge plays with his legs, especially if they're trailing. He wants to get chunk yards in this one. So this week here, with the way the game script's probably going to go, and with the athlete and the performances we've seen Justin Fields put on over the last few weeks here, I got him at 6. Number 7, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. So this week here, tough matchup at the Buffalo Bills. Probably going to be a snowy ball game on Saturday Night Football. But Tua this season's been great. I know last week was a down game for him in a big matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers. But this week here, I think he bounces back and he has a good fantasy day. Last week with only 15 fantasy points for Tua. But this week here, the Bills, I know they're a good defense, no doubt about it. But this is a must-win game almost for this Miami Dolphin team after they've lost the last 2 ball games in a row. And this is the 3rd game in a row on the road. So this week here, he needs a big game Tyreek Hill's having a great season, and he's always a big weapon. And Jalen Waddle, I know the last few games his numbers have been down, but if he wants to put up big numbers, give him a good chance to win this week. He's going to get Waddle more involved, and I think he will. And I think Tua could get at least 20-plus fantasy points in this one this week at Buffalo. Number 8, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So last week he went off for a monster ball game, over 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. And when you got amazing weapons like a Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and obviously Adam Thielen here, that's a great offense here over there in Minnesota. This week they got an Indianapolis team that obviously doesn't travel well this season on the road. And obviously with their best player Leonard out for the season, so Kirk Cousins, he'll have another good game this week here, I believe. He's a guy I could have confidence in. And right now, there's not many great quarterbacks this season at the quarterback position for fantasy football. So I think he has a good game once again is Kirk Cousins versus Indianapolis. And they got to get back on track after a tough loss to the division rival, obviously, the Detroit Lions. Now number 9, Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Trevor Lawrence, he's had a good second season here for the most part. The last few weeks, he's really come on and he's really putting up fantasy points, and another guy who uses his legs. So a few weeks ago in that ball game at Detroit, I thought Trevor Lawrence's season was over after his leg got sat on pretty much and twisted backwards. But luckily he came back, and the last few weeks here, he's been putting on a clinic here is Trevor Lawrence, especially last week, going over 40 fantasy points at the Tennessee Titans. But this week, he had definitely a tough matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. That one of the most stout defenses in the league, and the quarterbacks don't really put up fantasy points versus them, giving up the 5th least amount of points to quarterbacks on the season. But Trevor Lawrence, he'll get those extra yards with his legs, anywhere from 5 to 10 fantasy points. And if they're chasing points in this game, I know he's going to have to put up some yards, and he's got good weapons in Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, who were 2 good free agent signings this offseason here for Jacksonville, and also Jay Jones as well. So right here with a rebuilt offense, looking pretty good. I got him in 9, number 10, Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So Geno Smith, what a season it's been for him. A guy who's outplayed Russell Wilson by a ton this year after they had no problem trading him away with Seattle, which I think they actually knew what they had with Geno Smith. So Geno Smith, pretty much weekly, 23 or more fantasy points he's putting up. I know this week here, a very tough matchup versus the 49ers, even though they're home with the 12th man on Thursday Night Football is the Seattle Seahawks team. So Geno Smith, I think he'll go out there. I think we'll have a good ball game. You got the 2 good weapons in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Kenneth Walker looks like he's going to be back in this one as well, where he's a decent receiver out of the backfield. So Geno Smith, even in a tough matchup, I got him at 10. Number 11, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So it doesn't look that good that he's going to play in this ball game. But obviously, if he does, I'm still ranking him in the top 12. But Lamar, his numbers have definitely fallen off over the last few weeks here, Lamar Jackson. And we know last week he didn't play in that ball game, but he's obviously been struggling as Lamar over the last few weeks here, where he's pretty much failed to have big fantasy games. Besides week 8 and week 12, everything else, it's been 20 or less fantasy points. But this week here, Cleveland, I think he could have a decent ball game. But the health is definitely going to be an issue. And the other thing is he's not running the football as much as he did in the past. And obviously with a contract looming, I don't think Lamar Jackson's looking to run a lot and get injured. And he's already banged up. Obviously, he's Lamar Jackson with the knee injury. So right now, he hasn't practiced. And if he doesn't play in this game, obviously Tyler Huntley's a guy I still would have confidence in running out there, even though last week he got banged up as well. But it looks like he's going to be playing, is Huntley. And the 12th and final quarterback I'm ranking this week here is Mike White of the New York Jets. So a good matchup here for the Detroit Lions that give up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So this Jet offense, they've been moving the football pretty well. He's got good weapons. Garrett Wilson, a good rookie season, no doubt. Elijah Moore coming around once again, where he's finally got a quarterback that could at least get him the ball in spots here, where Zach Wilson was a train wreck for this Jet team. And also Tyler Conklin's had a couple pop games with Mike White. So Mike White's a gamer. He's a guy that this Jet locker room obviously likes a lot, and they follow him as the leader is this Jet offense. So right here in a good matchup versus Detroit, Jets home this week, even though the weather conditions definitely could be poor in MetLife Stadium. I still like Mike White as a guy who could go out there and put up a good fantasy game versus a weak defense in a potential shootout. So that's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking here for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.